I believe that this halftime performance that Kendrick Lamar will be doing at this year's Super Bowl in New Orleans will be historic. Nationers, welcome back to another episode of The Realest Podcast, episode 71. Banner is right behind me, just like always, just like good old times. Nationers, great to see you guys back here. Thank you guys again so much for tuning into another episode of this podcast. I have been enjoying doing this kind of throughout this first portion of the year, and every single time that I come in, I'm like, yeah, I just want to ramble, I just want to talk, I want to yap, but I also want to come in with some topics that I feel like I've done a pretty good amount of research in, share my thoughts on them. And today we're going to be doing just that. I believe this Sunday, as this episode goes out, there's going to be a massive event in the world of music, and that is the Grammys. Super excited about that. I might even watch, I'm not a huge awards show guy, but I might end up watching that. There's also the Pro Bowl, so I might end up watching that. I don't know if they both coincide. I have no idea. But I hope that you guys are all doing well and having a great week. I still have not received any update on my Amazon package. Again, I have like 5 items in there. Some things actually for these lockers, so I'm really hoping to get these lockers actually up and moving, and hopefully keeping, I believe I want to keep 2 of them. I want to move, I don't know. I want to keep 2 of them. I don't really know what I want to do with them. I know I put out a giant or a video, and it got like a lot of buzz. And basically whatever the top comment was, I was going to do. That comment said that I would have to transform one of these into Tom Brady's locker and then try and go to a pawn shop and sell it. I want to do it. I just don't know if I can make it believable, if you know what I mean. There were some good ones. One of them was like building like a vending machine out of it and having like snacks in it. The other, one of them was like building like an aquarium in it, which I don't think will be possible, but it would be cool if that were possible. I just don't think I have the proper facilities for housing fish, or anything aquatic, that is. So I'm thinking about at least keeping 2, making one, of course, a Nation or Locker. And then what I'm thinking, this is my idea, is having one in here, maybe both in here, but at least having one in here. So when we do have guests, they get their name like put on it, and maybe something inside that, I don't know, like caters to them. I think that would be something fun to do later on. I do want to continue to just grow the podcast, have some fun while we're here, but nonetheless, Nation, it's great to see you guys back. Again, going into the weekend, this last week was super fast, but it was also like super slow. Like every day was super long, but then I look back at Monday, I'm like, oh my gosh, like that felt like yesterday. So one thing that is coming up, like I mentioned, is the Grammys. We put out some predictions on this channel a while back. I don't know how long ago that was, but we put out some predictions in categories that I felt pretty confident I would know. If you know what I mean, like I don't listen to a whole lot of country, so I don't know who would win like a country album of the year or like country song of the year. So with that said, I put out my predictions, and I'm starting to realize that, sure, whatever I think, but there is one category that I think is very much up in the air. There are a ton of songs that could win this, and that category is Pop Song of the Year. There are so many great songs. I believe Sabrina Carpenter's in there, Chappell I'm sure you even have Taylor Swift in there. What are some of the other ones? I'm sure even Charlie XCX squeezed in there. Birds of a Feather by Billie Eilish is in there for sure. Shaboozie's, Bar Song. A lot of great songs that had a lot of buzz throughout this year, or throughout 2024, that is. And so I have genuinely no idea who is going to win that. There is an oddity around the Grammys over the past maybe decade or so, where there is an album that is like the stark favorite. There's an album that should win, or like a song that like felt like it should have won. And sure, like you can usually draw the line between like the most popular and the best. But the hard part is that the Grammys doesn't really have a consistent voting effort. And I guess there's like a bunch of people that vote on this. I think there's people in music, like critics, people in music that will write reviews. And then on top of that, there are, I think, like producers and music makers and people obviously that don't have a fight in, like they don't have a song in Pop Song of the Year. They're not voting for it, if you know what I mean. Like if you have an election, that person can still vote for themselves. This is not really the case. It's more of like a board in a way, kind of like it's a committee. I believe the committee is the proper term there. And so they vote, and obviously they go down through each category. They all have this grand listening to it and whatnot. And so I don't know how it cycles through, but there seems to be some lack of consistency. And maybe for better or worse, because it does make it exciting. Obviously, if like somebody wasn't predicted to win, but then won, but the exact opposite is really bad because there's this infamous Grammy nomination and rap album of the year when I believe it was To Pimp a Butterfly was going up against Macklemore's The Heist. Now, don't get me wrong. When Macklemore came onto the scene, I was like, oh, like Thrift Shop, that's cool. Like there was a bunch of like really fun songs. Like I have the album. And so all that to say is like, at the time I was like, oh, yay. Like it's super cool that Macklemore won. Like that's an artist that I recognize. I was also young. Like I don't know how that formally works from like an adult's brain. And especially from like a music listener, because if you guys have ever listened to Kendrick Lamar's To Pimp a Butterfly, it is a really good album. A lot of people have it in their top 5. Some people even have it in their top 3. Some people think it is the best album, at least rap-wise of all time, maybe even album of all time. So you're already putting that onto a really high pedestal. Now, at the time, I don't know necessarily how that album was scrutinized or praised at the time, like as it came out, because there are albums and songs that like maybe aren't really good when they come out, but then they slowly pick up steam over time. I don't necessarily know what the conversation was around it at the time. All that to say is that I think a lot of people were really outraged that Kendrick Lamar didn't win Rap Album of the Year, where Macklemore made like kind of like, sure, it is a rap album. Don't get me wrong. It is a rap album. But there is a difference where, like, I can make a rap album, but it have not much depth. Like, you could still talk about a few things, but, like, there are layers to a lot of albums. Some people are, like, intentionally, like, front to back. Some people, I mean, I'm sure there's been an artist out there that was, like, you have to listen in certain sequence for it to all make sense. Like, you have to listen to song 1, then 9, then 12, then 5, and then it starts to piece together this puzzle. If you know what I mean. Or this would be a really cool idea. If you made a song or an album with a certain amount of songs on it so that you would dial a number and no number would ever repeat unless it were like a 10 or an 11, like meaning that those ones get paired up. So like you'd have like 1, 8, 9, 2, and then it would be like 12. So it'd be the 1, 2 again. Whatever that would be. And then that you would dial almost like a number and then it would all make sense. Like that would be super cool. I'm sure we'll get that in our lifetime. If not, I will make it. Nonetheless, there's been a lot of inconsistencies, a lot of albums that, maybe deserved a Grammy. And it's hard because it's like, oh, it's really nice when like somebody wins, but then it's like, oh, but then why wouldn't, like, this is even worse than what it was back then, but that the one that won wasn't better than what the one that won now is. So it's like, why did that previous album not get the award? You know what I'm saying? Like GNX, let's say for that, like it's not up for any sort of award for this Grammy cycle. But let's say it's up. That album as a whole is a better album than Macklemore's Heist. So then, therefore, why did To Pimp a Butterfly not get the award back when it was originally nominated? There's a lot of inconsistencies about the Grammys. There's a lot of mystery about the Grammys this year. Obviously, there's a lot of contention in the pop side of things. I think usually, depending on the genre, there's usually one or two songs or albums that will just kind of dominate, depending on the album and depending on the year. Sometimes Grammy Award winners release things at like a really good time. Jay-Z won a lot of Grammys. Mind you, his music is pretty good. It's not just because it is Jay-Z and it's like, oh, like we gotta like push our stars. I think a lot of it happened to be around the time where it was this bridge between late 90s to like mid 2000s, and he just dominated it. And sometimes that's just how it works. I mean, he has 24 Grammy awards. Like, that's a lot. Like, Beyonce also has a lot. And sometimes it is just about timing. What else is coming out that year? And that's kind of the hard part too, because like some years it's going to be either really stacked or some years it's going to be just like a clear winner. Now, the Grammys and any music award and even TV show awards or really anything, there is a lot of contentious nominees. There's like Amelia Perez has like a bunch of nominees, and a lot of people don't say it's really good, but apparently it has a lot of nominations. So it's like, oh, okay, well, what are we defining as good? And like, I've seen clips of it and I'm like, I wasn't wowed by it. And maybe I just need to immerse myself more in it. I know for myself, I haven't heard of it until the nominations came out for, I think, the Golden Globe Awards. I think later this month on like the 12th or the 16th. All that to say, the Grammys are coming up this weekend. I will probably be watching it, potentially, because I feel like it's an important award show night. Obviously, there's been a lot of stuff with the Kendrick Lamar side of things, with Song of the Year, with Not Like Us, just a bunch of, 2024 in the world of rap was definitely like Kendrick's year. And so we're going to see if a diss track will be one of the biggest award hitting songs of all time, talking about Drake being a pedo and a certified lover boy, obviously certified pedophile there. And so it is pretty interesting how it will play out, because I've seen reports that there's like a slot. Usually they'll show like, oh, like what order things will go, but there's a mystery slot that is like double the time of everyone else. Usually everyone has like 4 minutes of performance. This one is 8 to 10. And so people are wondering what that may be. Some people say Kendrick. It does, but doesn't make sense at the same time, because the next week on the 9th, he will be performing at the Super Bowl. But then it would make sense that he would perform the week before. But then the flip side, it would make sense that he would perform the week before, so that then when the Super Bowl comes around, then it's even grander. I don't think he performs because he's already performing at the Super Bowl. Unless there is a completely different messaging and tone, and maybe he performs something from GNX. I don't know what that would look like. Maybe, this is my thought, is that he invites that one lady that opened up the album, the lady that was at the World Series singing the national anthem. I think that lady will come out. I think her name's Diana. She'll come out. She'll perform like a certain opening, because usually there is some type of voice or some type of narrative-driven character in a lot of his albums. We've seen this a lot in not Good Kid, Mad City, but we've seen this a lot in what's the album? Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers. We've seen that a lot, and so I wonder if there's something with that, and then maybe like it's a whacked out our murals, because like I don't think that song would be really good for like the Super Bowl. And so then songs that are not a part of the Super Bowl maybe get added to this set list, and you could have enough time that you can ease the crowd over the course of 8 to 10 minutes and still perform really big songs. Like, I'm sure at the Super Bowl he'll probably perform like DNA. He might perform Humble, depending on what the setting of this looks like. And so all of that said, there is this mystery performance during the Super Bowl. I have no idea, or during the Grammys, we have no idea who it is. It might be a collage of like a bunch of people, but it's a pretty extended, like most people don't have double time, yet alone double and a half time. So that will be interesting. I'll probably be tuning in. Let me know down in the comment section who you guys feel like are going to win some of your awards. If you're like team like Billie Eilish, if you're team Taylor Swift, if you're team, Kendrick, or even like Shabuzi. Maybe there's some like artists or like, oh, like I really like this band in alternative rock or country or indie pop, things of that nature. I love to know who you guys, are supporting going into the Grammys. There are so many people on a walk right now. I've noticed like 8 different people walk by on a walk. It is currently, how cold outside? Oh, I even have the weather. I don't know why I don't have the weather. Mobile app connection required. Well, great. Okay. Thanks. Nonetheless, heading into Super Bowl, obviously I put out my MVPs and put out my awards for who I think will get every list and accolade that the NFL honors will have to give out. That usually happens before the Super Bowl. So you usually see that the night before, and then you have the Super Bowl the very next day. So Pro Bowl, my goodness, has been so depressing. Don't even get me started. I've watched a handful of things in regards to it on YouTube, and it looks so sad. The satisfying catches, oh gosh, somebody's ACL could have blown up. Like, that was very dangerous. And then on top of that, it just wasn't very satisfying. The relay race was super boring. And then on top of that, the dodgeball was really rough. It was really rough. I watched precision passing. I watched Joe Burrow go for a score of 27, which I think is the highest that you could get in this now. The thing is I watched that, and then I was like, I don't think anyone else is going to tie that. It's like the max score, and it took like the allotted time. Like, sure, he missed a few here and there and had to go back, and that makes more time. But my goodness, I just I wish they could have ripped it. Like, the people like sending the balls through like the speed gates, or the people like handing the balls to the quarterbacks are so gosh dang slow. Like, I want somebody to like get there and like start ripping, grab, rip, because you're under a time clock. You have a minute, and my goodness, like I was watching the satisfying catch, and they have these like Hulk hands pretty much. I think they're called like the Mickey hands or something. And so basically they look like Hulk hands, but they're white. And you have to try and catch a ball with them. And that's already pretty difficult because your hands are like 2 times, 3 times the size. But my goodness, the person behind the speed gate would just like boom. Oh no, okay. Boop. I was like, oh my gosh, like, can we please be like at least somewhat efficient? Like, can we like speed this thing up? I did like at least that was like a team effort. So one person would go all the way through. Some people were so confused on like what the frick was going on. Apparently during the Snickers satisfying diving catch, like, oh my gosh, this pad that they had was like up to their knees. And most people, it was so long that like, you would have to take off so far to even catch it. So nobody caught it but the last person, which was Brock Bowers, who plays for my Raiders. So all that to say is that nobody caught it because the ball was getting sent to the far end of it, like almost this side of the room. And they were jumping off from this side of the room. Nobody could like get and reach, like the freaking commentator. And don't get me started on that. The commentators were more confused than the people watching at home. You are the one person that we are trusting to know what is going on. And the worst part was there was this, the lady commentator for the satisfying catch was like, they have to complete 3 catches with one hand, not using their body. Immediately ball comes in, Justin Jefferson catches it with his body with one hand. And then the dude's like, oh, that counts. And then like watches the ref go like, no, like signal like a incomplete catch. And then he's like, wait, that didn't count? I was like, brother, are you not listening to the person right next to you? Do you not understand? Like I understood what she said right away, that they have to catch it with one hand without using their body. Oh my goodness. It was really rough. The Pro Bowl has gone down like year after year. I loved when it was in Hawaii. It was nice. People obviously get to go on vacation. They like moved it to Orlando. Now it's like indoors and just like looks depressing. It's not a great spectacle. I've mentioned this last year, or like this, like a few episodes ago, maybe last episode, that last year I didn't even know that it went on. Like I know it's championship, Pro Bowl, Super Bowl, and that's how it's always gone. But I saw zero coverage of it. the YouTube videos right now have like 500,000 views, which is like depressing. We're talking about NBA ratings being down. At least like a single game highlight could at least get 1 million views. The precision passing happens once a year and can barely, I guess that one did crack 1 million. The satisfying catch, I think, was like 800,000. The dodgeball was so sad. It was so confusing. The comments are just like flaming the entire Pro Bowl. A lot of players are just like there. They don't look happy at all. They're like there, and then they like finish, and they're like, okay. Like Joe Burrow got done getting a score of 27. Another person walking, by the way. Joe Burrow got a score of 27, and then like walked over and didn't look like happy at all. Like it was so, and obviously they've allowed some people in, like Drake May. I think some people declined the Pro Bowl. And then they have to backfill like the next person in that same conference. And that's usually like Drake May got in. Tyler Huntley, who is the second string quarterback, who doesn't play actively, made it in. It's rough. It's rough. The Pro Bowl, I mean, a lot of people are like, oh, like certain things for your contract and obviously certain things in relation to overall just like your career. Like, oh yeah, they made 9 Pro Bowls, but like 3 of them you got filled in or something. You know, it's a weird accolade, and it kind of like reminds me of the Grammys now. And I guess all that to say, Grammys and football, like I said, it seems like maybe there's a big slot. Who is that going to be? It doesn't make sense for it to be Kendrick, but it also makes sense to be Kendrick for the Grammys. I want to talk about the Super Bowl because that performance in that game, again, I think it's a football game around a performance for myself. Me and the boys went to go watch the championship games last week, and that was really rough. I did not enjoy watching either of those games. I enjoyed like the Eagles winning. I wish that game was a lot closer, of course, but it ended up being what it was. A super high scoring game, by the way, like crazy high scoring, 55 to like 30 something. And so that game happened to be like a pretty like okay game. Like I was like, okay, like I think Washington's not going to be able to overcome the Eagles defense. And then we would have loved to see as America a Washington Commanders versus the Buffalo Bills. And now there's always that playoff Patrick Mahomes curse against Josh Allen. And we were hoping 29, you're like, okay, 29-32, like they could pull it off. There were a lot of questionable calls in that game. I don't really want to get started on it in particular. I'll mention this. The Xavier catch that they reviewed was definitely not a catch. In initial like viewing, I was like, okay, like I think he caught it. I get it touched the ground. I've seen like balls touch the ground, but it doesn't mean that it's necessarily incomplete. And so with that, because he had control, and then they replayed it, and it was like, oh, that's not even his arm. There's no way that they would count that as a catch. And then they come back after review, and all of a sudden, it stands. What do you mean? So, yeah, I don't know what's going on with that. I've seen, even in the Super Bowl, against the Eagles and I believe the Patriots, or, yeah, I believe that game, there was a catch kind of in the tiptoe of the end zone, like in the back line of the end zone, and he caught it. I don't know who it was, but they caught it, and it happened to like be in their hands. It was like this, and it touched the ground, but he had control, and they marked it as complete. And like that made a lot of sense to me. But it ain't even his hand, and it still touched the ground. So I don't think it was an interception. I do think it was incomplete. But yeah, I mean, that gives you a 1st and goal at the 7-8 yard line. And so the Josh Allen first down, I thought he got it. It's very close. That is kind of rough, but it is very close. So that one, I'm just like, I believe that that's a first down. And it sucks that they obviously went through review on the turnover and everything else. And then obviously scored the field goal. And then, or no, they went for it. They were already up that field goal. Yeah. And then they wind up running down the clock, and obviously ran a great play. They have a bunch of people flooding from left to right, and they have one person sneak out. And then obviously the linebacker, who's ever defending him, has to get through traffic. So, yeah, it was an overall pretty rough game. There was a lot of calls that maybe I don't think were calls. I mean, some calls just happen to be somewhat bad calls, but they were that. So, all that to say, during the Super Bowl cycle, we're getting an Eagles-Chiefs rematch. Obviously, the Chiefs are going for the 3P, and the Eagles are trying to get redemption. Jalen Hurts is actually the first quarterback, and I hate to be that guy, and it really sucks, but I will be this guy. And yes, the stat is very specific that a quarterback that lost their first Super Bowl appearance has never made it back since like the late 90s. He's the first. He lost 2 years ago and obviously made it back this year. And so it sucks because yes, like he's the first quarterback to do that. But I hate that sometimes the quarterback gets a lot of the limelight. It makes sense. They are the heart and soul of that team usually. They're the ones that have to get the ball down. I mean, yeah, you can hand the ball off like 200 times, but you still have to take a snap. I mean, I guess running backs could take the snap, and we've seen that during the Denver-Miami game in COVID. So it happens, but not very rarely. Quarterbacks are very high quality. They have to be a high-quality quarterback, and I think he had a great season. He obviously, there was a concussion late. Saquon's definitely had a big impact on that team and making it as far as they have. And so, like, yes, the stat is there. Do I think the stat, like, you could take it however you like it. But I do think football obviously is more of a team sport. And it's obviously not so exciting and being like, oh yeah, like a team that has lost has made it back, blah, blah, blah. All that to say, this game I'll probably be watching it. I know a lot of people on Twitter and maybe subsequent comments on the NFL are like, boycott like February 9th, like we're not watching. I understand. I think you'll still tune anyways. It's kind of that old adage, like no matter what I do, you will still tune in to watch because you want to see the Chiefs lose, or obviously in this case, the three-peat that might happen if you're a Chiefs fan, and Eagles potentially winning because that would be super cool for their team history. It's been about 7 years, and so maybe we'll see them win it again in 2031 if they do. So, all that to say is I will be watching. I'll probably be recording my reaction to the Kendrick Lamar, halftime performance, because I believe that this halftime performance that Kendrick Lamar will be doing at this year's Super Bowl in New Orleans will be historic, even given the circumstances of who is playing. Now, I say this for one of two reasons, because I feel like Kendrick Lamar is very intentional in his work. There is a general sense that what he is showing you, what you are seeing, is very intentional. And so, knowing what he's been doing within his music, Squabble Up, he's in a full blue at the Pop-Out concert on Juneteenth of last year. He's in all red. He brought a bunch of people from LA from both rival gangs. And, no matter if they're like actually like, gang, like type that, or like very involved, if that makes sense, or, just associated with them. I think he's been kind of bringing peace and harmony to LA. That's even been a lyric that he's said. And so I think he's very intentional in his work. And the one big thing is that there was a promotion that came out with SZA being like the special guest. There's a bunch of people like walking on the top, like, I don't know, like 5 pixels. And a lot of people are like, oh, is that like Tyler? Is that like Chromacopia? Would he bring out Tyler? Like that would be a pretty big like person to have on the stage. Like he had a great album. Like they both had great albums. SZA even had a great album even leading into this year with the Deluxe. And so I think he's been building up to this event. And he happened to wear purple, like a shade of purple in that promo where he, co-signed SZA for the Super Bowl. Like the songs that they make together, especially like Gloria or Luther, are amazing songs. All of the Stars, I'm predicting that they will play that song. That makes like the most sense because it is kind of more of an upbeat song. Luther is a little bit more melodic. Now, there usually is a section like in Lady Gaga's, they have like a slower song. They had that in Shakira and J. Lo's. They had that in, Usher last year when Alicia Keys came and performed. I feel like that was a very obvious choice. So a lot of people were like, oh, I would have loved to hear about this, like actually at the performance. And it's like, I think it was kind of obvious, maybe there was a leak and it's like, okay, let's at least put this out. So all that to say, he did wear purple, and obviously blue and red combined make the color purple. And he is in New Orleans, so like that makes a lot of sense, like even with the colors as well. So I think he's been very intentional in his approach to it. I think there will be more people performing. Of course, there's not only going to be just like 2 performances. Now, I understand that Rihanna, it was only her, but there were moments that it felt like somebody else could have came out, but didn't. There's one of 2 ways that I think that this Super Bowl performance goes. One of 2 is that there will be a few main artists, like bigger artists, like your like level of like Beyonce, like a big artist. You know, like when Beyonce, Coldplay, and Bruno Mars all came out, like that level of artistry will be out. This could include artists like Baby Keem, like performing Family Ties. I know you guys have seen like the clip when they're on stage and they're like, he's Baby Keem, like stuff like that. I think that would be super cool. Like, I think that there will be some like Mr. Morale, Big Stepper type style. There's going to be a lot of costume change. I truly believe that. Now, I don't know exactly what that looks like. I don't think that Kendrick Lamar, maybe he does. I think that there might be like a wardrobe change and lineal. I don't know what like a thing would be to combine that word. Linearly, where he starts off in like kind of like the street clothes, like LA style that he's been kind of rocking for a little bit. And then he kind of works up into that Mr. Morale Big Stepper or vice versa. So he's going to either be like very like decked to the nine. He's going to wear the square cut shoulder suits. And then from there, he's going to kind of strip that away. And it's going to lead into LA and there's going to be a whole bunch of people come up. So that's like, maybe I'm getting ahead of myself. But I think like Baby Keem will come out with Family Ties. Maybe a few songs with Black Hippie. I just think that it won't be the same as the Pop-Out concert. Because if you've watched the Pop-Out concert, and it's the exact same at the Super Bowl, it doesn't mean that it's anything special. Obviously, the album, he's probably going to play TV off for sure. I'm sure Mustard might be on the stage just for like fun because he doesn't sing, but I think for like just like a vibe. That's definitely something I think of. I didn't have it written down, but I do think that will happen. Tyler, the Creator, I think that will end up being something. I don't know if he plays Sticky. I don't know if he plays like Earthquake. Things that would be like big in his discography that like a lot of people would know, because you have to think about, you're performing to a lot of people. If you're playing like your most, like if you're playing like Backseat Freestyle or like, what would be like a Tyler song? Even like I Think off Igor, maybe not a whole lot of people have heard. They're great songs, but maybe not a whole lot of people have heard. So I think Tyler, the Creator will come out. I don't know what to extent. And then I think he brings people of his family together. I think for this first section of how this would go, Baby Keem, obviously SZA is going to be a part of it. Tyler, Creator, maybe Mustard. That's going to be like maybe the few set. Maybe some people from Black Hippie, Ab-Soul, Schoolboy Q, J-Rock, things of that nature. Like people very close, but then brings out his family. And this could be in relation to like some of the Not Like Us stuff. This could be in relation to, I don't know. I just think it's going to be a nice segment of songs with a bunch of people on the field. I think that that's going to be like the big thing. And I think like there's going to be this whole unison thing at the very end, even for both of these. I think that he really wants LA to be like a big focal point, but also this balance of, hey, there's going to be some really big songs that are played. You know what I mean? Like Family Ties, if you've watched, even Madden has it in there. I'm sure everyone's heard of Family Ties. There is a second part of this where I think it heavily leans into the LA homage. This is going to be, again, with a bunch of historically underrated people in LA, like Tommy the Clown, like we've seen in the Not Like Us. I think that you'll see like some type of crunking in there. And maybe this is like the stuff that you see on maybe partially the stage, but then also see in the field. I think that that's what we'll see. And then kind of similar to like the Not Like Us music video where there will be like other people maybe vibing, kind of like the Pop Out, but without being the Pop Out. So like bringing out like historically like rich people in LA that are well known, not like rich in money, but like people would know if you're from Compton and LA, Hawthorne, different areas like Skid Row, just general LA like culture. And so I think the overall messaging is giving them the light, people that maybe he had on some of his songs. Like even in TV Off, there's like the very back end vocal that's like very catchy. You might even think like Hey Now, songs that are obviously like off this album. So I'm intrigued to see how this transpires, right? I think there's going to be heavy LA, and then I think obviously at the very end there's going to be this big unison moment, kind of similar to what he did over, I believe, in Paris. There was a performance he did, and he was just kind of like riffing, if you know what I mean. Like he was just like talking from like the soul while kind of still sounded like musically sound. So I think that that's what ends up happening. He's kind of just been this very stoic person over the past year. He just kind of came out with the, like that verse, and then not too long after, all the diss tracks came through, and then Not Like Us kind of started off the first half of summer, and then it just kind of continued, and he came out with like Watch the Party Die. He obviously announced a Super Bowl performance. There's not like much general like emotion, and he's been very stoic. Like he hasn't really like smiled a whole lot. And part of me feels like either he's like content and he doesn't really need to show much. I mean, he has like given commencement speeches at the Compton high school ceremony. On top of that, just kind of in anything, even in the album cover, like even a lot of the album promos, like the video that came out with GNX on YouTube, like there wasn't much emotion. It just seems like there is this intentionality behind it, if you know what I mean. Like, I guess I have seen him smile when he did the commencement ceremony in the speech, but it's like a different setting. The setting that we've seen him in where it's very musically, like even at the Compton Christmas parade, like he performed, he just kind of like, very just like level-headed, and a lot of people would be like, oh, that's really boring. It's just like, it's not really that fun to watch. And like, I understand that. Like even sometimes I'm like, does he have like an emotion? Like I haven't seen this dude like crack a smile or like laugh. Like when I was listening to some, older albums, like I feel like the energy just kind of arises from it. And I've listened to GNX more and more, and I've kind of get the sense that like, whoa, like I think that there is some intentionality behind it. I watched this one video that kind of described that GNX was actually a Drake album created by Kendrick, where it doesn't feel like the album has a motif from front to back, whereas a lot of albums do for Kendrick. A lot of Drake albums don't really have like a certain theme from front to back. They're just album and songs that just kind of fit the vibe, and they just kind of go out en masse. They're very bloated, like even 2018 song albums that don't really have a overall message. And so the art form of hip hop isn't there. And so that's like a layer gone. But the thing is that thinking about that, I'm like, if listening to GNX, it felt like this very incomplete. It didn't feel like a Kendrick album. A lot of people said that it felt like a mixtape. Obviously is regarded as an album. And so all that to say is that Drake has been notorious to take other people's songs or other people's flows and then use them for his own, whereas Kendrick actually was adding artists from LA that are very underrated, people that a lot of people wouldn't know, and now they know because they were on this album. And then also every time that he is on a song with them, he's bouncing off with them, whereas Drake's like, hey, I want a verse from you. Here's the beat. Send me it over. You know what I mean? And so there's that duality of like, you could still do it. You could still make it work, even with like lesser known people. So he's praising a lot of these artists from LA that where he's from, whereas Drake is just like using them to get to the top. And that's what GNX, I watched this breakdown. I don't have every aspect correct. I know that there's more to it, but I just feel like GNX was a Drake album created by Kendrick, and it did everything opposite to what a Drake album would be. The reasons I mentioned, where it feels incomplete, but there is like a general consensus from song to song in a way. But then also the artists, he's bouncing off with them on the features, and then, that's a very collaborative effort. Like they're in the booth together. But then also he's praising artists and not just stealing their flow and then claiming it for his own. He did like the Not Like Us in TV Off, the same beat, roughly, because obviously Mustard made it, but it's the same carbon copy song that would be a hit. You know what I mean? And it just so happens that the way that Kendrick did it versus the way that Drake has done it, there is a pattern of depravity on Drake's side where it's just kind of the same. Like, I know that this formula works. It's very formulaic. Whereas Kendrick, like, there was at least some intentionality. And I watched another video talking about, like, why does this album feel incomplete? And he's been kind of talking about this general, like, we're going to get it done now. Whatever on my mind, we're going to get it done. And he's just going to speak wherever his thoughts are at. Like, obviously, he talked about somebody whacked out his mural. That was in September. So we know it's at least somewhat recent. Somebody said that he got the GNX beat like 2 days before. And obviously, it was on the album 2 days later. So all that to say is, like, there is some common thought behind this. There is an intentionality behind it. And I think with this Super Bowl, now I don't think that he beats 133 million people. That's a lot of people. I don't know if Kendrick necessarily pulls those numbers, but I will say is that it would be very funny if Kendrick Lamar beats Michael Jackson's all-time viewing record of the halftime show. And again, that mark is 133 million. And throughout this entire beef, and even for years before it, there has been this comparison that Drake is Michael Jackson. He's even compared himself to it. He has a song with it on Scorpion. And on top of that, Prince is Kendrick Lamar. So the idea is still there. And it would be very funny if Kendrick Lamar were to beat 133 million. I think the matchup definitely would have helped him. I think the matchup kind of hurts him. I don't think a lot of people will be tuning in. Maybe they tune in for the halftime show, but that's kind of hard to, like, know when it's happening. Like, you'd have to kind of occasionally turn the TV on, or at least have it on, and then, of course, be there for the halftime show. So all that to say is I think it will be decently historic. Well, I think it'd be like the biggest of all time, but I think it will be one of those ones in years to come, if you know what I mean. Rihanna's was huge. A lot of millions, hundreds of millions of views on YouTube. The one in LA with Dr. Dre and Snoop Dogg, like 320 million views. That is nuts. Kendrick Lamar also happened to be a part of that. 50 Cent, Eminem, Mary J. Blige. A lot of people, other people were a part of it too. And it's super awesome. It's in LA. Like, that's, how cool is that? And so I think a lot of people from LA will be rocking with it. And I think a lot of people will be watching. I don't know what that metric looks like. I think it's in the hundreds of millions, like 100 million plus, of course. So I think it will be rather historic in the sense that this performance will be looked at as like a turning point. The entire Not Like Us, the entire year of 2024 from Kendrick's output has really shaped and molded and changed the direction of where I think hip hop and rap was heading to. And I think it's been this giant takeover, almost just like in politics, right? Like it swings back and forth all of the time. So I think that it will be one of those ones. You're going to look back and you're going to be like, wow, like that was an inflection point in the world of LA, the world of hip hop. So I'm intrigued to see how it comes out. I guess we'll be talking about this in technically 2 episodes because that's maybe I might postpone next week's episode so then I watch it and then I can obviously share my thoughts on it. I think that would be really fun. I also want to give like a tier list of things in relation to all of the commercials. So we might postpone next week's episode and then post it on like a Monday or something. Because I guess the game would probably start at 3 and at 6. You could get that done. You could definitely get that done. I just want to keep the conversation like alive. You know what I'm saying? And not have it like 7 days after. So all that to say, I think it will be a very great performance. On the other hand, there have been some things that's popped up within the last few days. Tragic things. I just want to talk about a little bit of everything that has been going on in aviation. Now, for myself, you guys may have heard the Washington, D.C. crash. I myself found out on stream which kind of like sucks, but it's kind of like nice because my genuine, like, you get to see my reaction. I found out on stream about the Washington, D.C. crash, and there was a few things that had gone through my head at the time. And then yesterday, as I was writing all of this up, I went to Twitter and I see Philadelphia, and I was like, maybe it's just the Eagles. No. A freaking jet, a MedStar jet crashed in the middle of a street by a mall. And that was crazy. I'd seen some videos that yeah, I mean, that's Twitter. Weird, like, there's been a lot of disturbing things, viewer discretion advised type things. Like, I seen somebody's shoe with everything above their ankle gone. That's crazy. I seen like one where like you could still see the hair, and it's like not even a human. Crazy. I seen the videos of the dash cam. I seen the videos of the people in their rings. I've seen a bunch of ring camera things, and that thing just comes down just like a missile, almost like if they went like pushed it down, like pushed the throttles down, the controls down. They just went dive bombed right into the street. I don't necessarily know what happened, and I hope that the black box gives us some questions, because that thing is very important. It transcribes everything from thousands of flights, and it basically everything that you do in the cockpit, everything that is, controlled there, it feeds through a line into the black box, depending on where it's at. Sometimes it's in the front. Usually it's in the far back, because usually if you were to crash a plane, the front will hit first. That's just kind of natural. So they usually place it in the back of the plane, and that's where it sits. Like in Buffalo in 2009, that was the case. They ended up finding it. They had to map out the rear end of the plane and where it would land, and then they found the black box there. But the thing is this whole Baltimore, obviously this Washington, D.C. thing that went on, it's crazy. It's the first like big one in a handful of years since the Buffalo one. There was a bunch of ice skaters, like not like ice skaters that were like really old and historic. I'm sure maybe some of the coaches were, but these guys were teenagers, man. There was the wife of that one guy that got interviewed, and I think it was really sad and to hear when he's like, I just kind of pray to God that they're pulling her body from the river right now. And like Washington, D.C., the East Coast, it's very cold right now. It's January. That river's probably like sub temperatures, like very cold. If you were to ever be in that situation, you are probably not making it out, even if you were to survive like the general crash. The thing is I did some research. And so basically there is this plane, a passenger plane. It's basically what they call in aviation a CRJ over the air traffic controls. And this passenger plane was coming down. It's coming over the river. And it just so happens that a helicopter, Black Hawk helicopter from a military base nearby was also flying around. And I heard the air traffic control. There's some videos on the BBC that share what they were able to obtain. The footage, of course, that you see, like you get to just see like the plane is coming down, and then there's this helicopter, and it's coming down, and then poof, and then just dive bombs into the river. I've done some research. There are these geographical like maps, these topography graphs, and basically they show the water depth. And you could do it into meters, you could do it into feet. You got to make sure what you're looking at. Because I was like, it's only 1 foot. No, it's 1 meter. So there's different areas around this airport. Like some more on the bank sides are a lot steeper. In the middle is about like 5 feet, 3 to 5 feet. The edges are roughly about, what is it? I have it here. They're about 17 feet. They're about 5 meters. So like you're ranging from like 3 feet to like 15 feet. It's not too bad of water. Like if you're in the ocean, oh my golly, I am sorry. You're probably not swimming out of that one as the plane is like plunging down to its depths. As unfortunate as that is, this river happens to be a lot more shallower than most. There obviously are different areas of this river. Like 104 feet is the deepest. Luckily, they are nowhere near that. And so It makes sense for one of two reasons. They were able to obtain the plane and the helicopter very quickly. Like, they knew exactly where it was because, like, I mean, I guess a plane, the highest it would be not standing up. I mean, you're talking like 2 meters. Like, you would be able to see it. You know what I mean? So they were able to obtain it pretty quickly, frigid temperatures. If anything were to happen, at least I feel like you would be able to swim out of it. This happened so suddenly that I'm sure a lot of people fell unconscious. I'm sure a lot of people maybe even hit their heads, like just whack the front of their, chair of their seat, and maybe, just became dazed, confused. There was a concussion. Maybe they fainted, and all this happens in a blink of an eye. And just watching the video, hearing the air traffic control talking to the helicopter, because the helicopter was dark, but they at least had contact with it. They were talking about a helicopter, and they were making sure that they had visible separation between that and the CRJ, which in this case is the passenger plane. There happens to be a plane that just took off to the right, and you see it in these long videos. Like, you see another plane taking off. And so when I originally reacted to it, I was thinking that the plane had just been taking off, and that this plane would have taken off, hit, and then would have traveled a little bit and into the river. That's what I had thought. Like, it just basically just parabola, up and back down. And I was like thinking, oh, well, it crashed in the river. I'm thinking like Hudson River, like Captain Sully, the man that did it all. I had been thinking that that was what happened. That is not what happened, unfortunately. The big thing that ended up being the case is that they were 100 to 200 feet from the runway. And they were trying this helicopter did not see this plane. And I don't know what they see, the instruments, of course, but this was preventable. And that's the thing that sucks. 60 plus people lost their lives because something that was preventable. And that poor guy's wife, who had been on a trip in Texas, I believe, somewhere else in America to help low-income families, education, I believe. And, I mean, he could not be bothered for an interview. My God, he could not be bothered for an interview. He's watching his wife probably get pulled from the river. Not alive. And things happen like that. There's been another incident, obviously, with the Philadelphia one. That's a MedStar. There were at least 6 people on that plane. There was the 2 pilots. There was 2 doctors, a patient, and then the family of that patient. And 6 people ended up perishing in that. I don't know if any more on the ground. I'm sure that there is more on the ground simply because it landed on a freaking road. I'm sure, like, if a plane dive bombed into my car, I'm probably not making it out, as kind of the hard truth that is, but that's the truth. And what's difficult about all of this is that it's all happened within such a small time span. The jet, the Washington, D.C. flight, the South Korean flight. Now, this one also, the exact same, like, it felt so preventable. I ended up looking up what ended up happening. I watched a video of it, and I was like, oh, they're just bellying. I was like, what happened? Because I had heard about it. Happened like right after Christmas, right before New Year's. And I'm sure a lot of people were wanting to get back home, and whatever that may be, this plane ended up bellying. Basically meaning like the landing gear maybe got stuck and then like the plane is just on its belly like you would like on a slip and slide, right? You're on a slip and slide and you go, woo! And this poor plane makes it all the way down the runway, only for be these fortified walls, and the plane just get crumbled right up into it in a huge explosion. Everyone died. I think but one. And it's all because at the end of this runway, there was a bunch of inventory that needed to be kept there for the aircrafts and the general maintenance of things. At the end of the runway, and it just so happens that logistically, if anything did go wrong, it crashed right into that. And I guarantee you that all 176 people would have been alive if that weren't there. And so, I hope that this at least is a wake-up call to revisit a lot of things. Usually in life that there's a lot of things where you've done the same way and, maybe it starts to catch up to you, the flaws that kind of it brings. And so I'm hoping that maybe these past recent incidences that were very preventable at least gives like the NTSB people a wake-up call to just be like, hey, we have to be better. We cannot in 2025 and obviously the end of 24 have this happen. And I know there's been a lot of scrutiny on Boeing. I'm not here to like praise them. But when a duck flies into the engine and engine failure and you got to go down in belly, you did everything you could, but you couldn't change the fact that at the end of that runway, there was a giant wall. And if you crashed into it at a high speed, you wouldn't make it out. And so I hope that this at least gives a lot of people in aviation and people that work in that field just a reality check. Because a lot of these are preventable. Just seeing a lot of the videos on Twitter are insane. Like I seen the guy in Carl's Jr. He's like, yo, a plane freaking just crashed. And he's like pulling up after taking his order. It's heartbreaking because they're just people. I know for myself, you get into a car and you just hope to make it to your destination. Same thing goes for when people are on planes. You just hope to make it to your destination. And I hope that we all make it to our destination, regardless of where we're at, what we're doing, and anything that we have planned for that day. I hope that this is a reality check. The ease of mind for me is that they are all preventable. The jet one's pretty crazy. The Buffalo one seems to be like they stalled it, and that happened to be what happened. That's just like a pilot error, and we hope to be better because of that. And that was the last big one that happened on U.S. soil. Nonetheless, I hope that you guys enjoyed. Let me know who you guys think are going to win the Super Bowl down below, what your guys' thoughts are on all of the plane things and crazy things happening in the U.S. right now. Thank you guys again so much for watching episode 71 of The Realest Podcast. I hope to catch you guys in the next one. Make sure to leave a like, subscribe, and I'll see you guys later. Have a good one. 07 and peace. Peace!